Hello everyone and welcome to the Penguin Prof channel. This is part of my college success series on using your textbook for something other than a doorstop. So students find, of course, that they are covered with textbooks as they go through their college career. Textbooks are expensive, they're big and they're daunting, and they are extremely boring. So I have found that I spend quite a bit of time talking to my students about how to kind of not freak out and how to get through their textbook experience with a minimum amount of pain and frustration. You paid a lot of money for these books, so why not use them effectively? So here are some of my tips. First thing, most students skip all the introductory material because, quite frankly, none of that's going to be on the test. And that's true, but that's a really bad idea. You really want to know who exactly the author is and what makes he or she think that they are so smart, that they know all this information and that they are going to be able to impart it to you. It's kind of, the introduction is kind of the author's way of sharing with you what their view of the textbook is. It really does give you some insight as to what their plan is going to be for you. And I don't know about you, but I always like to know if there's someone who's kind of in charge of me at some level, I want to know what their plan is. So at least skim it. Get an idea of who they are. Get comfortable with the book. Does it have a glossary? Does it have an index? Try and use the index and see how good it is, because some of them really stink. And some of them will save you an unbelievable amount of time. Most textbooks come with supportive websites. Check it out right away. Find out, is it usable? Is it is the interface good? Can you use it on your mobile device? You're probably going to need some sort of key code. So don't lose that. Figure it out right away. Is this going to be something that you're going to use or not? These are my general reading tips, whether you are reading paper or you are using digital media. I'm a huge fan of ebooks. They save paper. You can take them with you everywhere. You can carry all of your textbooks on your computer, your iPad, or whatever. And I am just a huge fan, especially now because the textbooks are actually putting web links, embedded in the text. And I'm so excited about where all this technology is going. But these tips will work no matter how you are reading. Reading a textbook is hard work. Treat it like a job. Only try to read a textbook during your PPT, right? If you don't know what that is, you can watch my time management video to understand more about that. But this is really, really mind draining work. So unless you're really focused, don't do it. You want to turn off all distractions. I always recommend that you have a light meal and that you exercise. The best way to read a textbook is with your body kind of tired and your mind open. A lot of studies have been done on music and whether or not it helps people. You know if it helps you or not, but make sure that it's not distracting. For most people, music with lyrics is distracting, and music that kind of has a lot of changes in rhythm is very distracting. That's why a lot of people like jazz, or they like classical music or something that's fairly constant. But you got to sort of try and see for yourself what you like. TV is never helpful and is always distracting. That's its job. You want to make reading a habit. You want to try and study at the same times every day and partition all the reading you have to do so it doesn't kind of sneak up on you. I put my reading on to-do lists for every class. I make sure that all of the reading is done. I target 2 to 3 days before the exam. That way, the only reading from the textbook that I do before an exam is for review, and I'm only reading my highlighted materials. So the first step is to skim. These are skimmers, by the way. Skimming is basically looking over everything before the chapter, so you know what's coming. It's really like reading someone's profile before you meet them in person. You want to get the basics, and this is a big one. You want to pay attention to what scares you. Check out and see what you already know about the topic. You probably know more than you think. And it kind of prepares your brain so that as the professor is going through the material, you're kind of already saying, oh yeah, okay, I kind of remember that, and oh yeah, I see that that's going to be important. You're really getting a sense of what you're going to have to go back to really spend the time on. I recommend that you not take notes. I recommend you don't highlight. Don't get bogged down with anything. Just skim. Then you have your lecture. Then you come back for your in-depth reading. I call this active reading. You must do something other than just sit there and passively read. You have to do something with your hands, whether it's writing, highlighting, typing. You've got to make it active. For each section, sort of understand how it fits within the grand scheme of the chapter and within the unit that you're in. I recommend that you read with your lecture notes and your study guides out. This is my philosophy, okay? Disclaimer that other professors may not feel this way, but my philosophy is that if the material is discussed in class, if we have a lab about it, if it's on the study guide, or if there's a practice question, it's important. So as you go through the textbook, focus on those things. If you're reading in the textbook and there's material that has never been discussed in class, it is very unlikely that I consider that to be important, and therefore there's really no reason for me to test you on it. Again, this is my philosophy. Other professors feel very differently, trust me, I know. So as I approach my textbook, here's a column here about metabolism and exercise, and these are the related figures. In physiology, it's very, very common that we have lots and lots of figures like this. So my approach is, step one for me is highlighting. I use two colors. I really recommend against more than two. It gets really crazy. It starts to look like a rainbow. I use a primary color for concepts, equations, and statements, and a secondary color for examples, data, and case studies. In science, that's generally how textbooks are organized. So as I go through and I highlight, you notice that I use my primary color for statements, things that the author believes to be true, and then the pink will be supportive evidence, examples, etc. And then, of course, the figures. I find that using a primary color allows me for a very quick review later. I do that right before my exam. I read all my primary color highlights. After I highlight, I summarize what I read by hand or on the computer. I make my own outline. I recommend you draw figures if you really want to understand them. All of this takes time, and that's a good thing because you want to spend the time and really be focused on the material, not just passively reading it and saying, oh yeah, I know that. Some people like to combine lecture and textbook notes. I kind of like to keep them separate. So this is my one-page review of that column from my textbook that I showed you. And you notice I did draw this figure because I think it expresses a lot of information in a relatively, this is a quick figure to draw. And I wrote actually a question that I had of the author. Ask lots of questions. Make sure the author answers them, and if the author doesn't answer them, that's what the professors are for. This is a biggie. Write exam questions as you read. Let's be honest, that's what the professors are doing, right? That's what I'm doing. So don't you think you should be doing it too? These are the questions that I came up with after reading that column of text and looking at the page of figures. You should be able to do this. And it's not hard. You read a section and you think, okay, what could be a good question to come from that material? If you can do this, and obviously you want to be able to answer them, you're pretty good to go. I find that when I ask my students to come up with questions that they think I would ask, they're often very similar to the questions that I actually ask. So my students find this to be a very, very good study tool. If you're an auditory learner or if you drive a lot, I recommend that you summarize out loud into a digital recorder and then you can listen to it. You can listen to it at the gym. There's all kinds of options. The review before the exam should be easy because if you've done the highlighting and you've done the summaries, then all you got to do is go over those and kind of, as I say, oh yeah, everything. So, oh yeah, I know that, and oh yeah, I remember that, and I have an example of that, and I could talk about that. That's what you want to focus on. You don't want to be reading for the first time the night before the exam. I know. I'm dreaming, aren't I? But I wish you luck. I thank you for visiting the Penguin Prof channel. Please comment, rate, and subscribe. Your feedback helps a lot. Good luck.